Today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in the month of November. November looks like it was a pretty terrible reading month when we look at my stats. I read 13 books this month and my average rating was a 2.77, which is the lowest it's been all year long. But it didn't feel like a terrible reading month. It's just because I ended up with more 1 stars or 2 stars than I normally would because I completed a project this month where I was finishing all the books out of the top 20 best mystery thrillers according to the Goodreads Choice Awards, and that ended up with some books that I wasn't actually interested in and that I thought I wouldn't like that I ended up reading for that project that weighed down my average rating. Every book I read this month was captured in a reading vlog except for one book. So if you want to hear about almost any of these books, there's a video I can point you to. I did a video where I tried to see if I could solve a murder mystery with Murder in the Family. I did a video where I was reading a couple new thriller books for books that I had arcs of, for books that either just came out or will be released in the future. I did the Goodreads Choice Awards video where I read a whole bunch of the best mystery thrillers of the year according to Goodreads. And then the one book that I read this month that was not documented in a reading vlog was Tower of Dawn. So if you want to hear about this one, this video is your only spot where you'll hear about that. But for all of the other books mentioned, I'll have the videos linked down below if you want to check those out and see more in-depth thoughts. But because I already talked about almost all of these books, I'm going to keep my reviews a little bit shorter today and save a little bit of time in case you are somebody who's kept up with the reading vlogs and you just want a quick refresher and not to hear like my full in-depth thoughts. As always, we're going in order from my least favorite to my most favorite, starting with the one book I DNF'd this month, which was Deadbeat by Adam Hamdy. This was featured in that thriller arc reading vlog, and I was very excited for this one because I really loved The Other Side of Night by Adam Hamdy, so I was looking forward to reading something else from this author, but I ended up DNFing this one around 40% into the story because it was just nothing like his other book and I was not vibing with it. The story follows this guy who is very much a self-proclaimed deadbeat. He does not have anything going for him. He doesn't have money. He's trying to support his child and he has this tumultuous relationship with his ex-wife. I'm pretty sure that they ended up getting separated. He has been to prison and it looks like he might go back again. And then he ends up getting this anonymous offer from a random stranger that he will receive a whole bunch of money if he kills this random stranger. And so the story follows what happens after that. I did not like the writing style of this one. I hated being with this main character. Just everything about it I clashed with, and so it ended up being a DNF for me. And then I looked into this author's backlog a little bit more, and it looks like he's written a lot of books like this that are in the more gritty side of things, and The Other Side of Night I think was more of an anomaly in his work, so I think I'll just be more cautious about what I pick up from him moving forward. Also featured in that thriller arc video is The Other People by C.B. Everett. This is not coming out until March, and I had quite the experience with this book because I really thought I would love it. It's described as an Agatha Christie style book where you're following these 10 strangers who all wake up in this mansion together, no memory of why they're there, and then they get put to this very strange task that they have to solve this murder. But then people start dying one by one and they're wondering if the threat is within the house. After having finished this book, it's so weird to talk about it and describe like what this book is because there's really no other way to describe it than that is what it is. But when the story finishes, it just leaves you with something else. And I did not like it. I was not enjoying my experience with this one because it was just so strange. The whole thing felt like a really strange nightmare. There were just a lot of things about it that didn't make sense. Like it just felt weird, and it felt like it was intentionally weird, but I didn't know where it was building to. And it really hinges on that ending. That ending is either going to work for you or it will not, and the ending did not work for me, and I ended up really not liking what this book did and the way it was structured and really anything about it. So I ended up giving it a 1 star, and I would just not really recommend it. I ended up with 2 1-star ratings out of the Goodreads video I did. The first one is The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. This is a story about this adult woman whose father dies and it is ruled an accident, but she thinks it could have been a murder, and so she teams up with her estranged brother and they go back to where their dad was living and they try to talk to people and parse out what happened to their dad. I actually did enjoy the last book I read from this author, but this one I did not. Like I said, I gave it a 1 star. It was not bad. It was just really boring to me, I think is the main thing. I had nothing to grasp onto, nothing to get interested in, and it ultimately just fell really flat for me. The other 1 star from that video was House of Glass by Sarah Pekkanen, which I felt the exact same about. It was just very boring to me. The story follows this woman who is working with this family because the parents are currently going through a divorce and they're trying to figure out who gets custody of their child. Right before this happened, their nanny died at their house, like fell out of a window, and it turns out she was pregnant with the husband's baby. And so there's a lot of strange circumstances of what's been going on in that family, and the woman who's working with them is starting to parse some of that out. Really similar to the last book I talked about. I don't have much to say. I just didn't like it. I did not vibe with it. I found it really, really boring. It didn't have anything to grasp onto in the story. I didn't care about the characters. It just was not for me. The other book that was in my thriller arc video that I have not talked about yet is The House Swap. I ended up giving this one a 2-star rating. This follows 2 families, one from London, one from France, that decide to do a house swap. And the synopsis gives away more information, but it's a lot of things that don't happen until really far into the book. So really all you need to know is 2 families do a house swap. Things happen that disrupt their lives after that. I really like the setup of this one. I enjoyed the writing style. I found it to be very atmospheric, and I really enjoyed the idea of 2 families living in each other's houses and then these dark things starting to come out between them. But it was just such a slow burn. This book was just so dragged out. It took so long to get to some interesting things, and then by the time it did, it just didn't have the payoff that I was looking for. So it ended up being a bit of a disappointment to me. I also had 2 stars come out of a Goodreads video that I did. This first one is Not What She Seems, and I had a very similar problem with this as I did with the house swap, which is that this was far too dragged on. It was far too much of a slow burn. The story follows this woman who's from this small town in South Carolina, and she ended up leaving the town several years ago after the death of her father because everyone in the town thinks that she killed her own father because she was the only one with him at the time of his death. She became very ostracized in the town and decided to get away, but now she's coming back home because her grandfather's in the hospital. And when she's returning back to the home, she also finds there's this new woman in town who is doing some strange things. It seems like she might be up to something, and she wants to get to the bottom of it. But it takes almost 300 pages, it feels like, to really get the story going. In my notes, I marked down that it really takes to page 270 before the full synopsis gets completed and then the main character finally starts to have an active role in trying to solve things. It just spends so much time in the setup, her just kind of bumbling around the town, back with everyone, her getting some questionable vibes, and just like nothing is really going on. And then finally around page 270, she's like, oh, what if I started to like investigate things and try to figure out what's going on? And then the ending really picked up and it was a lot better, a lot more engaging. And I just feel like the book really had potential if it would have just been edited more and the pacing would have been solved. I talked about this in the video, I still don't know, but this publisher is Thomas and Mercer. I don't know if that's self-published or what, but it really feels like there was something here, but it was just buried in a really slow lead up. So I ended up giving it a 2-star. I think I would try from the author again because I do think there is potential here. The other 2-star from the Goodreads video was The Last One at the Wedding, and this is an author I do not particularly want to try from again. I have read from Jason Rekulek before. I did read Hidden Pictures, and I did enjoy that book more, but I did still have like some things about it, and then this book I did not enjoy, and I'm unsure if I really want to pick up his next book. I think I'm going to be more selective with picking up books from him in the future. This is a story that follows this man who's been estranged from his daughter for the past several years, but now she's getting married, and so she calls him and invites him to the wedding. He decides to come, and then he ends up realizing that the man that his daughter is getting married to is kind of strange. He has some strange circumstances around him, and he's just not sure if this is the best choice for his daughter, but he's trying to not ruffle feathers too much because he does want to be back in her life, and the story follows the events from there. This is another book that's quite a slow burn. It's pretty dragged out, a lot of building and building and building, and there were some things that I just thought were more obvious than they should have been, I guess. And then the ending I really disliked. I felt like the ending also dragged out and it just didn't have a very strong, satisfying arc to the story. I'm not saying that I'll never read from this author again, but I will definitely be more selective moving forward. Now moving into 3-star territory, I had 3 stars, all from the Goodreads video. The first on my list is The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. I actually didn't hate a Frida McFadden book. We are back. We are back. I'm not hating them again. It's amazing. This is a story about this woman who starts dating this man, and then there's also these murders going on in the town around them that seem to all be related to this guy who will date women and then kill them. So, dun dun dun. Is their relationship in danger? I thought this seemed so straightforward, and as I was reading it, I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is just like a dramatic suspense and you're just like waiting for the bad thing to happen. But it actually had a reveal that surprised me quite a bit in the ending, and I just love that feeling of getting surprised from a thriller, even if you finish the book and you look back and you're like, oh, that was kind of dumb, or like, that doesn't make the most sense, or I don't know that I love the direction that went. If it can surprise me and I don't hate it, then I had a good time. And that's how I felt with The Boyfriend. I also did this one on audiobook, and I feel like that was a lesson in potentially just doing audiobooks of Freida McFadden books moving forward, because then I'm not thinking about it too much. I'm not over examining the writing quality. It's just like being told to me, and I'm more susceptible to having a not terrible time, I guess. So ended up being a 3-star. Didn't think it was that bad, and she's back on my not terrible side. I wouldn't say she's fully on my good side yet. I'm a little bit skeptical, but you know, I'll try another Freida book in the future. Next is Society of Lies. This was also a 3-star for me, and after finishing this book a couple weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, however long it's been, just simmering on it a little bit more, this book has kind of stayed with me. I really did like the atmosphere of the story and the writing style. It's just lingered a little longer than I thought that it would, so this one was pretty enjoyable. This is a dark academia story that follows the story of these two sisters. There's, I think, 10 years between their age, and both of them attended Princeton, and they were both in this secret society at Princeton, and the story begins with the youngest sister actually dying, and as the older sister is grieving the loss of her younger sister, trying to figure out what happened, it's also dredging up some connections to things that happened in her own time at the university. So the story is told through multiple perspectives at multiple points in time as the mystery is unraveling to you of what happened in the present day and what happened in the past. These types of stories, dark academia stories, are usually not my favorite. It's just not my favorite trope. It does read more like a drama, but like I said, it's kind of been lingering with me, so I'm giving it a little more credit than I did initially. Maybe I'll bump it up to a 3.5. And I do think I would definitely read from this author again, because I think given a different trope, given a different setting, I'd probably have an even better time with her writing. The other 3-star I had this month was The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. This is the sequel follow-up to The Maid. This is a cozy mystery series that follows this maid who works in a hotel. Deaths happen around her, and she frequently ends up looking like a suspect, but she has some investigative powers that end up prevailing at the end of the day. And so The Mystery Guest was just following a new mystery that Molly was at the center of. I ended up having a pretty good time with this. Didn't really have many complaints. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. Kind of just sat right in the middle of a 3. I do find this series enjoyable, but I don't love it. Like, I don't have a huge place in my heart for this series necessarily. But if I like it enough that doing a project like this and this book coming up on the radar, like, I'm not mad I read it, but it's just not my favorite thing. But if you do really gravitate towards these characters, I think you're gonna love this series. For me, I just think it's okay. It's not my favorite cozy mystery series, but it's a good time. Next, I'm gonna talk about Tower of Dawn, because I think this is a 4-star, I think. I just finished this book today, so I haven't had a ton of time to simmer on it, but I don't know. I have interesting thoughts about this book, because this is the penultimate book in the Throne of Glass series. Some people read this book in tandem with the book that comes before it in the series, because they're both following the same time span but different characters in different places, and so you can tandem read them back and forth, and it's kind of like you're just reading a multi-POV story that's unfolding in different places at a time. The book right before this one in the series ends in such a crazy place that you're like, I just want to know what's going to happen after that. And then you get to this book and it sends you back in time and you're reading what's been going on with different characters in a different place. And so it does feel like it kind of rips you out of the story a little bit, and it pulls you somewhere completely different with some people that you just don't care about as much as your main people. So I was having conflicting feelings on it in the beginning, and I was really thinking, wow, this is why I only read series when they're completed, because if I was reading this as the books were being published and you have years to wait between knowing what happens at that final moment after how the book before this one ends, and then you get this book, you know, and you're like, you really want to know, but all you get is this book, and then you have to go read this, that would be a really frustrating experience. But with the whole series already being out, like, I already know I'm gonna just jump into the next book and I'm gonna be fine. But I can fully see why people have some mixed reactions to this book. If I'm judging this book just in itself of what it was, I did like it. I liked the characters and the story that we got in this. I do think there's just no way it needed to be this long. It is 660 pages, so almost 700 pages, and it just, like, did it need to be that long? I don't know. I don't read a lot of fantasy. I'm very new to reading fantasy. I'm especially new to reading series, and so I'm not as accustomed to the pacing of a series, but as just, you know, a general reader, I'm like, I feel like this could have been 450 pages. I think we could have cut out some things and gotten to things sooner, but I do like the characters and I didn't mind being with them, and it didn't feel as long as it was. So that's why I'm like, I don't know, I've got really complicated feelings on this book. So I think I'm just gonna give it a 4 because that feels right for my enjoyment level, my immersement level, regardless of everything else. That's how it stands. So we are almost done with the Throne of Glass series. I only have one book left. I'm going to read it in December. We're wrapping up this project in 2024. I'm so glad I made it here. There were times when I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it all in 2024, but we're almost there. It's going great. I also sort of had difficulty reading Murder and Family by Kara Hunter, but I did end up giving this one a 4-star as well. I just read this book in a very different way than I typically read murder mysteries, because this is the book that I did the video of where I was trying to actively solve it as I was reading it. This is a mixed media murder mystery that is about this guy whose stepfather was murdered when he was a child. Now he's all grown up and he is doing a documentary where they're digging back into the case. They're bringing all these experts together and seeing if they can finally solve what happened to his stepfather. I just love a mixed media story that's told with like scripts and newspaper clippings and all kinds of interesting elements without actually just giving you straightforward text. It just adds this element of a mystery to it and an element of distrust in certain POVs, and like you're only seeing certain amounts of things. I find them just so fun, but I've never tried to actively solve one like this before where I'm like taking notes and piecing things together about who certain people are and making my theories, and I actually had a really fun time doing that, and I did not a terrible job. I did pretty good, I think, at guessing what was going to happen in this book. The only thing I can really think that knocks this down from not being a 5-star is I do like when authors use the mixed media element to really add some sort of complexity or something unique and different. And this one did feel a little bit straightforward because mostly you're just reading kind of like script dialogue of characters talking to each other as they're filming this show. And so I would have appreciated just something a little bit different, but I know these are probably so hard to write, so I always think they're great, you know. But I've read from Janice Hallett, you know, so I have incredibly high standards because she does a masterclass in writing mixed media thrillers or mixed media murder mysteries. This one was great. I definitely recommend it. I had fun with it. Gave it a 4-star. And then I had 2 5-stars, and I cannot choose a favorite because I love them both and they're both so different. So the first one I have in my stack that we'll talk about first is All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. These were both in the Goodreads video that I did. This is the one I was most intimidated by because it's a long book. It's also a more literary book, and I just didn't know if it was going to be my thing, but I ended up actually really loving this. This is a story that starts as you're following these 13-year-olds, Patch and Saint. Patch is this boy being raised by his single mother. He is not super well off, and he was born without an eye, so he wears an eye patch, and he considers himself a pirate, so he goes by Patch. Saint is a girl who likes to keep bees, and she's being raised by her grandmother, and they end up forming a friendship, and then something tragic ends up happening in their youth, and then the story follows decades after that as the mysteries around what happened truly start to unfold, and as these characters are haunted by what happened and how that trauma leads to their obsession in the way that they live and the things that they pursue in their life. It's kind of an ambiguous synopsis, but it works because it's best to just go into this not knowing what's going to happen. I was very pleased and surprised with how things do end up wrapping up in the end. And you really just get such a full picture of these characters and their lives, and you just get so immersed in feeling like you're living lifetimes with them. I'm pretty sure this is being adapted into a TV show. If it's not, it definitely should be because this would make great TV. And I would say if you like really character-driven stories that really dive into character exploration with a literary angle that does have a mystery lying in the foundation of it, then I think you're really gonna like this too. But if you're looking for something lighter, maybe cozier, with some really charming characters, might I introduce you to We Solve Murders by Richard Osman, my other 5-star read of the month. This is the start of a new series from Richard Osman, the same author of the Thursday Murder Club series, and in this one you're following two main characters, Steve and Amy. Steve is Amy's father-in-law, and he leads a pretty quiet life, living in a little village, solving little petty crimes. He is a retired detective, and he spends his days finding lost dogs or trying to right the wrongs of money being stolen from a cash register. And he likes a simple life, but then he gets pulled into a bit of a whirlwind with his daughter-in-law, Amy. She lives a more chaotic life. She is a bodyguard for people who are highly endangered, and the danger starts knocking at her door, and so she enlists Steve to help her solve who might be trying to harm her. I love the connection between these characters and even the side characters that come into the story, and even just like the minor characters who come into the story. I love the way Richard Osman portrays his characters as just these really normal humans who have a lot of humor and lightness to them in the darkest of circumstances in life. I find his books to be really comforting, and even if the mystery that's threading through the story isn't the most compelling type of mystery to me, I just love the experience of being with these characters, spending time with them, and I'm really excited to see where the series goes from here. So that is it for all the books I read in the month of November. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books and what you think of them, or let me know if I convinced you to pick any of them up. Now that we are in December, we are entering the season of end of year videos, so expect a lot coming from me soon as I wrap up the year, talk about my favorites of the year, tier rank some books, all the fun things. I'm also just excited for my December reading. I feel like I'm gonna be reading a lot of good things in December because November was project month, trying to fill out a project. December is try to get in all the best reads by the end of the year month. So I'm excited for that, and I think I have some good reads coming up soon. But today, that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!